Good evening from New York. I'm Ali Velshi in for Chris Hayes. The Epstein scandal continues to upend Donald Trump's administration. At the moment, we are tracking reports of an Epstein strategy dinner hosted by Vice President J.D. Vance at his residence in Washington. Now, this was supposed to be attended by top Department of Justice officials, but in just the past few hours, we've heard reports that the strategy session may have been canceled or moved to another location or just rescheduled. There's a lot we still do not know, but here's what we do know. The first hint of that session came yesterday. Multiple sources told CNN and others that Vance's dinner would be to discuss the administration's mishandling of the so-called files related to the child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Vance's spokesman denied that, saying, quote, there was never a supposed meeting scheduled at the vice president's residence to discuss Epstein's strategy. But multiple sources confirmed to NBC News that a bunch of people were gathering to discuss their Epstein strategy with the vice president, among other topics. Earlier today, both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were asked about the meeting in the Oval Office, and they fell back on the usual refrain. Democrats, hoax, fake news.
Is Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw it reported today, and it's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation, and I think the reporter who reported it needs to get better sources.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax, and that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit, okay?
Just remember, moments ago, he had said he had no idea about this meeting. Now he knows it's a hoax. NBC News confirmed that Vance's dinner guests were set to include the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who continues to have legal obligations to Donald Trump as his personal attorney, having represented him in his first impeachment. As Attorney General, she's come under fire for overhyping the Epstein files and then turned around last month saying, nothing to see here. Other planned guests include Donald Trump's other personal criminal lawyer, now Bondi's deputy, Todd Blanche. 2 weeks ago, Blanche spent a couple of days interviewing Epstein's top criminal accomplice, the convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, for reasons we still don't understand. Even if the agenda for this planned dinner did not include a discussion of the dead child sex trafficker who was a friend of Donald Trump's for years, the meeting itself would be pretty bizarre. A coordinating session between a vice president and DOJ officials is the sort of thing that Republicans would have made into a scandal before the Trump era. In fact, come to think of it, they did. Back in 2016, after a 30-minute get-together on an airport tarmac between former President Bill Clinton and sitting Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who was investigating Hillary Clinton's email server at the time.
I think that the Attorney General has compromised the integrity of any independent decision that she could make in this investigation.
The perception of it stinks to high heaven. It smells worse than potato salad that's set out for a week past the 4th of July.
I don't want to call Loretta Lynch a liar.
Right.
I don't. All right?
A lot of people have conspiracy theories, but as they say about conspiracy theories, you only have to be right once to make it all worthwhile.
That meeting was a huge scandal. Lynch apologized. She said she regretted it, understandably, because the rule of law in America depends on this firewall that exists between the Department of Justice and the chief executive, the president. The Attorney General is not the president's lawyer, except, of course, in this particular case where both the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General are Trump attorneys, which makes it all the more interesting that this strategy session may have been scrubbed altogether, as if the administration realized that the optics are really bad. Trump's Attorney General and her number two reportedly set to eat at Trump's vice president's house to talk shop. They are trying to contain and manage this scandal because it's not going away. Yesterday, the New York Times reviewed previously unpublished photos from inside Jeffrey Epstein's massive New York City townhouse, one of the sites where he reportedly abused women and children. Some of those images revealed a birthday letter to Epstein from Woody Allen and a first edition of the novel Lolita, as well as a credenza in the house where Epstein kept a photo of himself and with Donald Trump and his future wife, Melania, along with photos of Epstein meeting numerous other statesmen and tycoons. Yesterday, the House Oversight Committee issued a subpoena to the DOJ for the complete and unredacted Epstein files. It also subpoenaed 10 officials, Both Republicans and Democrats, including the former President Bill Clinton, as well as a host of former Bush and Obama officials, to testify about what they knew about Epstein. But that subpoena list strangely didn't include the one guy who really would know an awful lot about the sweetheart deal that Epstein got and why he got it. Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney who signed off on Epstein's deal to avoid federal prosecution for his crimes in 2008. Acosta then later became Trump's first labor secretary. And so with the story not going away, the Trump administration is trying to strategize. Yesterday, NBC News learned that the administration is considering releasing a transcript of the DOJ interview that Todd Blanche conducted with Ghislaine Maxwell. Just days after that interview, the DOJ moved Maxwell to a minimum security prison for nonviolent offenders in an apparent violation of federal prison regulations. Multiple sources tell CNN that the administration has also discussed having Blanche hold a press conference or even giving an interview to the popular podcaster Joe Rogan, a Trump supporter who's blasted the administration for breaking its promise to release the Epstein files. One thing is clear, the administration still doesn't seem to have much of an Epstein strategy other than backing Trump's attempts to shift the conversation away from his relationship with Epstein. Congressman Jamie Raskin is a Democrat of Maryland. He serves as the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. He joins me now. Congressman, thank you for joining us. I want to just lean into your expertise as a lawyer for a moment. This dinner, if it's happening tonight or not happening, we don't know. But this dinner would be highly unorthodox if the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General were not lawyers of Donald Trump's. And let's just remind our audience that when you are somebody's lawyer, unless they explicitly fire you and give you a responsibility, give you freedom from your responsibilities to them, your responsibility as a lawyer to them never ceases to be.
That's right. Well, look, the first thing that everybody needs to regard is simply that you don't need a top-level legal political strategy session with the highest government officials in the land in order to release the file, which is what Donald Trump said for years he wanted to happen. All of them were rallying around the idea of release the Epstein file. The reason that they're engaged in top-flight negotiations and strategy sessions now is how to figure out how to bury the file and then release little snippets of information here and there to create a transparently skewed and distorted vision of what's going on. Basically, the public is watching one of the greatest cover-ups in American history take place in broad daylight.
Wouldn't it be the right thing to do to put someone in charge of this file, basically, and let them deal with it with at least the optics of them working independently, whether that's the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General or Maureen Comey, whom they fired, or someone else? This idea that they're all getting together and chin-wagging about it makes the whole thing seem that much more suspicious.
Well, look, there is someone in charge of it, the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, who's got access to the files, who ordered 1,000 FBI agents to peruse and pore over the files in order to ascertain any mentions of Donald Trump, photographs of Donald Trump, video clips of Donald Trump. She was responsible. And then when the MAGA right itself rebelled against this suppression of the file and of the truth, they decided they had to try to diffuse the responsibility with some other people. So then they sent Todd Blanche to go and meet with Maxwell, who, of course, had refused to testify at her own trial, but now suddenly wants to spill her guts. And what do you know? Apparently, the White House likes what it hears from Maxwell, who wants nothing more than a pardon and clemency from Donald Trump. So the whole country can see exactly what's going on. Donald Trump has proven himself perfectly willing and eager to offer pardons to people who do his political bidding, like 1,600 violent insurrectionists and extremists who storm the Capitol, but others who render him favors in particular ways. So we can see that as a setup. All they need to do, if they want to keep their promise to the American people, is to release the Epstein file. And that's what the victims are asking for. The victims are out there, and I'm glad over the last week or two, they've really stepped forward to enter their voice, which should be central to this whole public dialogue, because we're dealing with a crisis of child sex abuse and exploitation across the country, and they speak for a lot of people.
One of the survivors who ultimately died of suicide in the last month, the family of Virginia Giuffre, released a statement about this meeting that, again, may be happening, may not be happening. Makes a very poignant point. It says, missing from this group is, of course, any survivors of the vicious crimes of convicted perjurer and sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Their voices must be heard above all. We also call upon the House subcommittee to invite survivors to testify, end quote. Let's talk about this, because they're right. Why do they not have a role in this thing? If this thing's been dredged up and it's back in the forefront, as well it should be, why are they still on the outside of this?
Well, Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of engaging in this child sex abuse, and as part of this whole conspiracy and agreement, with Epstein. And it is the victims now, the survivors, whose interests and whose desires have got to be put first. They want to see the truth and the whole truth about the entire conspiracy come out, and they've got to be heard. But what we have is the Trump Justice Department organizing itself not around the interests of the survivors, the people who were victimized by Maxwell and Epstein, but rather organizing itself around protecting the perpetrators, despite everything they said during the campaign. I mean, they didn't promise, Ali, to throw 17 million people off of their Medicaid health care. They didn't promise to dismantle funding for anti-human trafficking in the State Department, in the Department of Justice, and throughout the government. But they did.
Promised this.
The one thing they did promise was to release this file.